She hasn't graduated from college, and as you can see, she is not an impressive person, but well, you can treat her as a housekeeper. Mysil introduced me to her friend like this. And to make matters worse, instead of calling me by my name, she gave me the nickname housekeeper. I lowered my gaze to the floor. Then I heard a gasp from my SIL's friend. I'm Clara, 36 years old. I'm a homemaker. I used to work part-time at a CD shop. It was there that I met my husband Daniel, who was a customer at the CD shop. We got married, and now we have a 2-year-old daughter named Ira. My husband runs an IT company with his father. My in-laws are both very kind, and they treat me very well, even though we live together. They are amazing, but there was one problem in the family. It was my husband's sister, Natalie. What? You didn't even go to university? That was the first thing Natalie said when I went to introduce myself before the marriage. I didn't go because I wanted to start working early. I replied, no. You're the kind of a person who only thinks about the immediate future. Hey, didn't you know that it's common sense that not going to university will lower your lifetime income? Are you stupid to not think about it well? Well, there really are people who were born with a stupid brain. And now she is in my family. Well, embarrassing. From the beginning, I was teased about being a high school graduate. Since then, Natalie started calling me high school graduate. What was even more unpleasant is that she didn't say that nickname in front of her family. She only used it when speaking directly to me. But I couldn't tell my in-laws about it. I thought they wouldn't want to hear about their own child's dark side from their DIL. As for SIL's own background, she graduated from the prestigious university. And she was working at a bank, a truly respectable university, and a respectable job. From the perspective of someone who graduated from a reputable university and has a respectable job, I can't even begin to comprehend your life and your way of thinking, she would taunt me. It seemed she can't forgive my life itself anymore. And that anger also began to target my daughter. It started right after I gave birth and started living with my in-laws again. She would barge into my room when she heard the baby crying and say, crying in the middle of the night without considering the situation is just too much. Make her stop crying. I finally retorted, babies are supposed to cry. It's their job. What are you talking about? Babies in TV ads are all smiling. Crying like this without any regard for others must be a genetic problem. You must be the carrier of a gene that lacks consideration and causes sleepless nights for others. Children of high school graduates like you must have low intelligence. What a pity. Even after I stopped breastfeeding, she continued in the same manner. When my daughter threw a tantrum and cried, she would say, oh, no, I can't stand it. Children of high school graduates with low intelligence have such low-level demands. Why is she crying because she wants to wear a red dress? What's that about? Is she Little Red Riding Hood? It's so annoying. She should get eaten by a wolf. Was that something you say to your own niece, even if jokingly? Besides, her examples are always from folktales. She kept complaining. I don't want to get infected with your stupidness, she would say, and open the windows even in the winter. Being a high school graduate became a virus in her mind. Natalie, who constantly bullied me every day because of my educational background, decided one Sunday to invite her friend over. The daughter of the CEO of a famous company listed on NASDAQ is coming, Natalie proudly announced in the morning. You, as a high school graduate, probably wouldn't have the opportunity to meet someone like a CEO's daughter, right? If you were to make friends, it would be with CD dealers or something. That's funny, she said, making fun of me thoroughly, then said, well, even a high school graduate like you should learn your place for once. I'll let you see the CEO's daughter. You can serve coffee for us, sticking out her chin. It seemed having the daughter of the CEO as a friend was something Natalie could boast about. I thought she was mean as usual, but I felt like maybe something interesting would happen. And that afternoon, the CEO's daughter came over. I heard only the greeting voices at the entrance, and it seemed they went straight to Natalie's room. I had gone to another room to get some coffee, and as I passed by the front door, I caught a faint whiff of the floral notes of the perfume the CEO's daughter seemed to be wearing. I made coffee, placed cookies on a plate, and knocked on Natalie's room where the two of them were. Please come in, Natalie's expressionless voice replied. While saying, I brought coffee for you, I placed the eggs and cookies on the table. The CEO's daughter thanked me with a smile. In contrast, Natalie said nothing, and she was just looking down on me while closely observing my actions. And then, she said to the CEO's daughter, You thought she was a housekeeper, didn't you? This woman. She's actually my stepsister. Well, calling her a stepsister feels awkward, and I really don't want to acknowledge her as a relative, though. I'm sorry, she looks unsightly, doesn't she? She hasn't graduated from university, and as you can see, she is not an impressive person, but well, you can treat her as a housekeeper. After high school graduate, she started calling me housekeeper. She kept looking down on me endlessly. But I raised my head. And I said to the CEO's daughter, "It's been a while, Karen. Are you Clara?" Karen seemed surprised. I knew she would be surprised. Natalie was also taken aback. "Do you know each other?" Karen responded to that. "She is someone who I truly respect," Karen told Natalie. I nodded to that and told Natalie, "When I heard about the name of the company, I thought you might bring Karen. So I came to serve coffee as instructed. I thought I'd let your dear friend Karen, who thinks of you as a friend, know your true nature. But it's been a long time, hasn't it, Karen? When I met you, you were still in middle school, but you become a beautiful young lady." Karen looked at me nostalgically and blushed for a moment, but then her face turned completely pale. "Natalie called you a housekeeper." Although her lips were originally pale, they turned even more pale. And with those trembling lips, she muttered, "I can't believe it. Do you understand what have you done?" Karen asked Natalie. "Aren't you mistaking her as someone else? This woman is just a high school graduate. It's strange enough for you to know her, but it's impossible for you to respect her." With a forced smile, Natalie shouted. In an attempt to make the situation better somehow, she acted even more weird. Her next words were even more derogatory towards me. "She really lacks intelligence. After all, she's just a high school graduate, and her child cries all the time." Karen asked in return, "Are you talking about the child who was walking with a stuffed animal in the hallway earlier? Isn't it normal for a child that age to cry? Weren't you like that too? And are you saying such terrible things to Clara just because she is a high school graduate?" With that, Karen took a slow breath. "I'm working in a French-speaking job now because of Clara's help, you know." "What?" Natalie rolled her eyes. "What? That's unbelievable. There's no way there's any connection between this high school graduate and you. Clara used to work as a part-timer at a CD shop. I can't believe you look down on her so much because of her educational background and job." Karen's voice was cold. "Huh." Natalie let out a voice like a crushed frog. "Even though she is a part of your family, you don't know anything about her, right? Huh." "Karen, what are you talking about? She only graduated high school, and she just worked as a CD shop clerk after that, right?" It was obvious that two of them were not on the same page. I steeled myself. I took a deep breath and spoke to Karen. "Que fait long temps, que va? Long time no see. How have you been?" I greeted in French. Karen smiled warmly. "Oui, je suis vraiment heureuse de vous voir ici comme te. Yeah, I didn't expect to meet you in a place like this. I'm so happy." Afterward, she and I continued our conversation in French for about 20 minutes. During that time, Natalie remained silent, only making incoherent sounds like After what seemed like another 20 minutes, Natalie finally interjected. "What's going on?" I immediately responded. "Why don't you join the conversation in French? Aren't you just a high school graduate?" "Yes, I'm a high school graduate. So what?" I asked. Then Karen said, "You know nothing about her really." I told Karen, "Well, she has always been looking down on me solely based on me being a high school graduate without knowing anything else about me." Karen shook her head as if she couldn't believe it and told Natalie Clara is helped my dad as well. "I won't allow you to call her as high school graduate anymore." Natalie seemed astonished, and Karen began to recount the story. "My dad went to France in his 30s, leaving everything behind to secure our family's future as the heir to the company. However, when he first arrived, he couldn't speak French very well. The pressure of carrying the company's fate and dealing with homesickness almost broke him. It was during that tough time that he stumbled into a bar, and there he met Clara." I interjected with some background. As Natalie mentioned, I didn't think much about the future. After graduating from high school, I packed a single suitcase and flew to France. I thought, let's do what I want to do now so I won't regret it later. I decided to do things I wouldn't have done if I'd thought too much about the future. At night, I sang in bars to make money. I met Karen's father there. He was alone in a corner of the bar, a glass of alcohol in his hand, looking down with tears in his eyes. In France, I met many people like me, who decided to pursue big dreams or were sent to carry the fate of others, just like Karen's father. France is that kind of country, a place where people dive headfirst into their dreams, sometimes ending up feeling lonely and lost in a vast sea. Karen continued her story. So, during that time, Clara sang a song for my dad. It was the famous Stand By Me, but she changed it to Stand By You when singing it to my dad, a man who had ventured alone to France. My dad said he would never forget that night. Even though he felt lonely, he saw that young American girl singing just for him, and he felt like he wasn't alone. That night, my dad talked a lot with Clara. He was touched by her courage, how she'd come to France with just one suitcase and was making a name for herself. He couldn't speak French well, but he learned by listening to her songs. He gained the courage to continue, despite his initial struggles. Since then, they kept in touch as friends. 15 years have passed, and they still exchange Christmas cards. Well, I had to come back to the States because I wasn't able to become a musician in France, though. But I wanted to stay connected with music. So, I worked at a CD shop. I added, I think your determination to continue staying connected with music is amazing. Karen smiled at me and said, I wasn't good at French when I was in middle school, and I told my dad I don't want to learn French anymore. It's not fun. My dad wanted to support me, so he introduced me to a private tutor. Guess who that was? It was Clara, who was already back in the States. She introduced me to a lot of French music, starting with easy-to-understand songs, and that's how I began to enjoy learning French. Songs made it fun to learn, and I wanted to know more. That's how I learned French. So, to judge someone like Clara, who helped my dad and me so much, solely based on her educational background is really... Karen paused briefly and then spoke with a tone of disdain directed at Natalie. Terrible. I mean... Natalie stammered, her lips trembling. Wait a second. No. Karen said firmly. But, I know you would be in trouble. Karen added, her tone cold. You got your job because you claimed to be friends with me, right? What? I exclaimed, shocked by this revelation. Natalie was taken aback. She looked at Karen with pleading eyes. Well, that's true. You know what is going to happen, right? Karen's gaze turned cold. And then Karen continued. You also didn't study at all at the university, right? All the other students were studying hard, but you were just partying. Listening to her, I sighed and responded to Karen's statement. People criticize others to validate their own insecurities. You used to call me a stupid high school graduate, but I feel pity for you now. Upon hearing those words from me, who she had always looked down on, Natalie bit her lip. Nevertheless, it seemed she couldn't tolerate hearing those words from me. But you haven't been studying either. She snapped at me, persistently. It seemed she would never satisfied unless she maintains her dominance. Then Karen said, Clara has C2 in French. Did you know that? Natalie seemed astonished. She almost fell from her chair. It was kind of funny to see her surprised that much. My mom initially opposed Clara becoming my tutor, saying that she has to have a certification to be my tutor. So Clara took exams and got C2 immediately. Well, I mean, I was living in France, so it's not something to boast about. Karen told me it's really amazing, and turned to Natalie and said, Clara did study unlike you. Don't judge people without actually knowing them. It was very nice to see you again, Clara. But I have to go now. Karen began to prepare to leave. Natalie, I'm not friends with you anymore. I'll tell my dad what happened today. Natalie crawled up from the floor where she had fallen and clung to Karen. Please don't. Karen pushed her away. I have to tell him. Your boss will probably be informed as well. You can look forward to it. Natalie kept crawling toward Karen, and then being pushed away, made a sound as if something had broken, and my husband, who had heard the commotion, rushed upstairs and knocked on the door. I opened the door. My husband came inside, but seeing Natalie, in that dramatic scene where she crawled on the floor, left him speechless. What are you doing? My husband asked, astonished by the scene. At this point, there was no use hiding anything. I explained everything, from how I had been treated as a high school graduate to how it had escalated to bullying me and my daughter. I explained how everything became clear with Karen. My husband had remained silent throughout, but he finally said, "It's natural for kids to cry." Then he added, "I married Clara because I was impressed by the depth of her knowledge gained from her overseas experience. Haven't you ever talked to Clara? You'd realize how knowledgeable she is if you just had a conversation with her. The intelligence of a person cannot be measured solely by educational backgrounds. You should realize how unwise you are for judging her like that. My husband told Natalie. Karen left without saying anything more. My shocked Mill came to the room after hearing the commotion. Karen explained the situation to her. My Mill was greatly surprised by the unexpected story, but my daughter, who had overheard, presented evidence by saying, "Auntie always calls Mom high school graduate. Good job, daughter." My usually mild-mannered in-laws were furious when they heard this. They boldly entered Natalie's room, where she was still sobbing. As soon as they stepped in, they yelled, "Get out!" She was expelled not only from our home but also from the job. She had voluntarily resigned from her job. The reason was that her boss had told her, "I heard that story." In the end, Natalie, who had no significant achievements or qualifications, moved to the suburbs, but she still hasn't found a job. With such a lack of qualifications and a high pride, she likely had little value in the job market. Surprisingly, she asked Karen for forgiveness and requested her help in finding a job again. Karen apparently refused, but Natalie went even further, asking, "At least lend me some money." Karen recently got married. She asked me, "Could you sing at my wedding? My dad wants to hear you sing as well." "Sure, I'll change the title to Stand By Us and write lyrics for you," I replied with a smile. Stand by us, stay by our side. Stand by you, I'm by your side. We are by your side.